Coffee on a Tuesday. And Block 6! I was trying to figure out what I should do for my next vlog, so I went upstairs and talked to my neighbor Zia. He told me he's been dying to go to the big Scientology complex on Sunset Boulevard, so I said, perfect. Where are we going?
We are about to go join the beautiful world filled with John Travolta and Tom Cruise, known as Scientology.
Woo! Here it is. Church of Scientology.
Parishioner parking on there?
They didn't let us take the camera inside, so I'll just tell you what happened next. We were greeted by a receptionist who looked like he was 19 years old and looked us straight in the eye. Everybody in that building looks you straight in the eye. The first thing he did was push forward a piece of paper on which we were supposed to write our first name, our last name, our address, our phone number, and the reason why we were coming here. We said that we were interested in the religion and that we wanted to know more about it. So he suggested that we take the self-guided multimedia tour.
This is an invitation to freedom.
Man can save his soul.
So in the back part of the lobby, there's all these interactive TVs where you can watch different aspects of Scientology and move your way around and learn all different types of things. I got these two sample DVDs. First, The Way to Happiness, and second, Scientology, an overview. There was a booth on Scientology ethics. There was a booth on the evil of psychiatry.
I've never agreed with psychiatry, ever. Before I was a Scientologist, I never agreed with psychiatry. And then when I started studying the history of psychiatry, I started realizing more and more why I didn't agree with psychiatry.
There was a booth that started to explain the philosophy of Scientology. There was a booth all about L. Ron Hubbard. There was even a booth where you could see your own thoughts. This is the device that you use to do that. Looks like an old toy telephone. After the self-guided multimedia tour, we went up front and asked to take personality tests. So I think me and Ziad thought that it would be like a 10 to 20 question test. 200 questions. Some of the questions were, do you feel ill at ease in the company of children? Do you whistle while you work? If a 10-year-old was acting out of place, you would approve corporal punishment? You find yourself dwelling on past misfortunes. You rarely think about past failures. You're the type of person who's always thinking about what you could have done. Does it sometimes feel that all of reality is a dream? Finally, at question 192, they asked the question that they had been asking over and over in so many different ways. Are you depressed?
It's very, very, very easy to see how, if you were in an emotionally distressed state,
They could capitalize
how they
on
just capture you. They
Oh,
throw
yeah.
a big old fucking net on you.
For someone who's depressed or who just feels particularly empty, for someone who's tried psychology and psychiatry and it hasn't worked for them, why not adopt the idea that psychiatry is actually evil? Sometimes it's easy for us when we're in a vulnerable position to take the exact opposite stance of the stance that you had before. When really the answer is not to flip your ideas 180 degrees, but only to adjust it a little bit in either way. But anyway, in 5 minutes, the receptionist returned with the result of our personality tests. Here it is. You can see that it's a line graph showing where it is you are in between the spectrum of several different traits. The young Scientologist said to me, now sir, this is not our opinion of you, this is a scientific analysis of your opinion of yourself. So we went over the results and he asked me a lot of questions which I tried to answer as honestly as I could. And a big deal was made all the while about how practical Scientology is. See, the first step that you take after you take the personality test is a series of communication courses. In those courses, you're meant to unlearn the ways that we've learned to imperfectly communicate with each other. And I talked to a few Scientologists there who all said that after those courses, they really learn to open up themselves to communication. And I believe that it works for them. Although it may give a clue to why they all seem a little bit brainwashed.
They're all learning communication in a way that makes them act the way they do. You know, I assume the communications courses and the other courses that you have to take are very specific.
Anyway, the next step is purification. So I asked him what purification was, thinking that it would be just a bunch of people sitting in a room trying to think away the toxins. He said, actually, we have a few large saunas in the facility, and you sit in them and sweat out all the toxins. And the next thing after that is the beginning of the bridge to total freedom. So here's where I had the question that I really wanted to ask, and that was, where does the practical, almost utilitarian side of Scientology come into contact with the religious side? He couldn't answer that question, so I had to be taken to a new Scientologist. So we walked over to another desk and I sat down and I asked the same question, but a little bit franker. What do you worship here? Because Christianity, for example, has God, the Bible, and Jesus, and this is the infallible words of their religion. Now, the second Scientologist took the tack that there is no worship going on in Scientology. Now, I don't know if I really believe him on that, but taking him at his word, I said, then why do you call yourselves a religion? And he said, well, you know, the word religion has been usurped over the years. And I said, yeah, maybe that's true, but the religious people have had it for a good 2,000 years, so let's just give it to them. I said to him, I think you're alienating people by calling it a religion if all it really is a self-help community. Unfortunately, that's when I had to leave because the building was closing and my neighbor Ziad had to get back to our house.
So what did you think?
It was interesting. I didn't know about their volunteer efforts, which he made a big push about.
Sure.
But it was religion, you know? They don't differ that much. They ask you to be good to other people, but I'm sure behind closed doors, it's like basically segregate people and always put up walls.
I don't know what I really believe about Scientology. I don't know what I think goes on in there. I don't know where the money comes from. I don't know any of these things. To us on the outside looking in, Scientology is like a fog. We don't see past the doors. But I recommend anybody who's interested to just go there because they will give you certain answers to certain questions and you can learn at least a little bit about the mystery that is Scientology. Make your decisions on it for yourself, but just remember, give a fake name.